Hey everybody, Mr. Macintosh here, and I'm back for my second of two videos on the macOS Big Sur 11.3 update. My first video was in a new format, which was to get you all the latest features and changes in under 5 minutes, and you guys really liked that. But this is my normal deep dive video, which is a longer video. It'll be more like a conversation with you all about all the details of the update. Plus, we'll do a live demo of the update on 4 different Macs. I've got an M1 13-inch MacBook Pro, I've got a 2018 Mac Mini with a T2 chip, I've got a MacBook Pro with a T1 chip, and I've even got a 2013 early model, which is unsupported for Big Sur, and it runs the Patched Sur patcher for all you unsupported Mac fans. I've got you all covered here. We're also going to go over benchmarks and even details that you're not going to find anywhere else. We've got a lot to cover, so grab a drink, sit back, and let's get started. Okay guys, before we start, I wanted to go over the format of this video like I mentioned in the intro. It's going to be kind of a lightly edited video that's more of a conversation with you about all the changes. And this helps me get out this update fast. So if you hear me mess up or something like that here or there, again, this is just like a normal conversation. If something doesn't go right, it's just going to happen and be on the video. And that helps me get this information to you out faster than I normally would, because it takes a long time to edit a 26-minute video with all these things going on. Plus, as you see it live, if something goes wrong, maybe something goes wrong in your machine, and we'll see how it goes live here. So now that we know that, let's get started and get these updates kicked off, because I've got my timer here, and we're going to time the update, and we're going to see how long each one takes, and then we're going to run a benchmark after to see if there's any changes in the benchmark here. Okay, so we've got our timer. I'm going to pull up and just so you guys know, I always pre-download the update so we don't have to wait around for it to download. The download on this particular update, and I've got that on my detailed article here, is 5.71 gigabytes. So it's going to take a while, depending on your internet connection speed, to download the update. So let's get that started. And like I said, I pre-downloaded that by running, you can click download now in the software update pane, or you can run the software update binary. You guys have seen me do that before, running software update -DA for download all, and that'll download the latest update and it's ready to go. So you'll see this button now that says restart now, and you'll know as soon as you click that button, it'll go down and immediately install the update. What we're expecting here is the M1 Mac to jump right to the install, the T2 Mac that's going to have some text here, and it's going to prepare the BridgeOS update for the T2 chip, and we're going to expect the T1 chip to go right to the update with a progress bar. So let's get these started. We've got our timer here. We'll get this started again, and we'll get going. So we'll get this started here, and let's get started. Remember, on the M1 Mac, we have to authenticate with our username. So we'll type in our admin password and we'll hit OK, and it'll get started. On the T2, we don't have any of that. So we'll hit restart now, and it goes down. So all of it already started. Now it looks like it's still not going. We're going to have to click again, I think. Oh, no, we didn't. It just took a second here. And again, that's why it's great to do this stuff live. And there it goes. Now let's get this 2017 kicked off here. Restart now. And there it goes. Great. So while those are going, we've got the timer going, and we can start talking about the update a little bit here. So actually, before we do that, let's get the Patched Sur machine kicked off. So we'll bring that over here, make a little room, and kick this bad boy out. And we are running Patched Sur version 2.1. And Ben just came out with this update the other day, and I wanted to give it a shot. So we're going to click Run Updates, and it's checking for update. And look, it already sees macOS Big Sur 11.3. Let's start the macOS update. And we need to type in our administrator password here. And there it goes. So we're going to let that download here while we wait. And back to the update. So you can see that these guys are kicked off. We got a progress bar in each one, and they're updating. And let's go back to all the different changes that we got going on here. So in that first video, I went over all of the features, all the new changes on the macOS Big Sur 11.3 update. But what I want to talk about here is some of the fixes and some of the sizes, the full installer, the IPSW full installer file, and all that kind of stuff. The first thing I wanted to kind of mention was the brand new 24-inch iMac. I put an article about that together here. Actually, I don't have that up here. Let me see if I can pull that up. We'll go back here and we'll take a look at that because I want to talk about that a little bit while we go in here. Let's pull down. Ah, here we go. So this article I put together, and it was everything that you might need to know about the new 2021 24-inch M1 iMac. This iMac it's really interesting, and I say that because it's polarizing. Some people love it. Some people, they're lukewarm, and some people don't like it at all, and they're actually pissed off that they didn't get the Pro version. And the rumors are saying it's going to be bigger than a 27-inch. It's going to be maybe even up to 30 or even 34 inches in the Pro version. It's going to maybe come with an M1 or an M1X processor that's going to have a lot more processing power than the M1. And we didn't get that, so a lot of people are upset about that. But it's coming. And it'll be here soon, and it'll get here. Will it be in colors? Probably not. It might be more in a space gray and a silver color, like the current Mac or iMacs that are out now. But when this thing first came out, and you can see the little picture here and all the different colors, I love the colors. You know me, I love my classic Macs, and this goes back to the original iMac, which had a CRT tube that came out in 1998, and it had all the colors. And I love the retro stuff. I love the original Hello that's got the color in it. I love everything about that. Some of the things that I'm lukewarm with is ports, and I talk about that in all the way at the bottom here about this being a desktop class machine. Let's get down here. What I like and dislike about it. I love the colors. I love that this thing's going to have an M1 and it's going to be fast. It's going to have a beautiful screen. It's going to be all in one. It's going to be super fast. It's not going to get hot, and the wattage is almost half as much as the previous 21.5. So it's going to use less power. And I love the fact that it's got the new Magic Keyboard with Touch ID. I love the new speakers. That's going to be great. The microphone, the 1080p touch or FaceTime camera. All that's going to be really great. What I didn't like, I originally was saying that I didn't really like the chin on the new iMac, and now that I've had a little bit of time, over a week, to think about it, I'm changing a little bit on that. And what I mean by that is that if you look at this monitor, this might be kind of what the iMac would look like without the chin. And when you look at it from afar, it might just look like a standard monitor. I feel like now that I think about it, the chin kind of gives it the iconic look of the iMac. The weird thing that I still don't really like is that it's missing the Apple logo. The Apple logo, and I mentioned here that the iMac has had the Apple logo on it in every single model since 2004. And I thought that was a real interesting point to think about. And the models before that actually said iMac on it. So I just feel like that's a little weird that they didn't put anything on there at all. It's on the back, but again, most of the time it's going to be sitting on a desk like this, and you'll see the front of it all the time. And it's got a little bit of a white border, and then more of a lightish color. So if it's a purple, it's a lighter purple on the bottom, or a light green if it's a green back. So that's that. And again, I talked about the ports. It's missing a USB-A and an SD card slot. And you might say, why in the heck would it have? Why would that new machine have a USB-A port? Well, the M1 Mac Mini from 2020, that released in December, had 2 USB-A ports. So if Apple's trying to tell me that USB-A ports are out of style and no one's using them anymore, then why would you include them on your brand new Mac Mini desktop with an M1 processor in it? Why couldn't you have just given us a USB-A port on the side and an SD card slot? Because think about it, this iMac's going to be used for creatives, people who do video editing or photography. They want to be able to put in their SD card to load their videos or their photos, all they could do. And I get it. This thing is so thin that you can't even fit a RJ45 network port and you can't even fit a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. That's how thin this thing is. So I get it. So you would have to put the USB-A port on the side, but in my opinion, that would have been fine. Just put the SD card on the side or put the USB-A port on the side, and then you're done. Now, if you have to do that now, you got to use a dongle to be able to do that. And the last thing you want to do after purchasing maybe a $1,200 to $1,500 personal computer is buy another dongle or another dock to be able to do that. So that's kind of my opinion on that. I can't wait. I'm hoping that I can get a hold of one so I can show you guys all the features. Also, the power supply is really interesting too. Oh, it's a magnetic and it has an external power supply. And I mentioned that's the first time that any Mac desktop has had a external power supply since the 2009 Mac Mini had an external power. When it went to 2010, it was built in inside the unit. It was only a 2-prong power cord. So I just thought that that was a very interesting decision that Apple made on that. So that's the 24-inch iMac. So now that we talked about that, let's jump into the other thing. AirTags are one of the biggest things that the 11.3 update supports. And I mentioned in the previous 5-minute video that the 11.3 update updates the Find My app, and it has the new tab on there for you to be able to find your AirTags when they come out on April 30th. So they're actually coming out on Friday. So it's going to be really interesting to see how those work when they come out. I'm going to try to grab some of those too to see if I can't figure out, or maybe I'll put out a video on how to get those set up and configured. So now that we've got that, let's go over some of the details here of this update. 53 security fixes, and we've got a big one, which is a gatekeeper bypass that I wanted to discuss in this video too, which is a really big flaw in every single Big Sur release from 11.2.3 all the way back to 11.0 that was originally shipped on the M1s. It also affects every single version of macOS Catalina all the way back to 10.15.0. The good news is 11.3 patches it, and the latest 2021 security update for Catalina also patches that exploit. So that's really great to know. Also, 29 new features, 13 enterprise fixes and changes that I didn't go over in that video. I obviously didn't have enough time, and 11 resolved issues for standard type of an issues. So I changed this article a little bit to basically try to do a table of contents because this thing is just getting big. You saw how long it took me to scroll through this. And the idea is to give you as much information as possible. Everything that you would need to know about this update is that I try to put in this article. If there's something missing in here, tell me about it. I'll put it in there. Like, I'm actually thinking about putting Patched Sur information about this or Unsupported Mac information, because I've got a lot of watchers that are really interested in getting Big Sur working on their unsupported Mac. So I might be putting some information in there every time that comes out. I already do link, and I'll put this up here too, that I've got a brand new site or a page that has all of the patched or all of the full installers of Big Sur via the install assistant.package. So you can see here that I've got a direct download link to that package, which is usually anywhere between 12 and 14 gigabytes. So you download this package and install it, and all it does is take the macOS Big Sur app that you use to upgrade from 10.15 to Big Sur, or you use to create a USB install media, and puts it right in your applications folder. So you don't have to worry about Mac App Store download problems. You don't have to worry about trying to get it from the software update, fetch full installer thing. Sometimes that doesn't work. It's a great feature, but sometimes it doesn't work properly. So this is literally the easiest way to get a full installer of macOS Big Sur. And look at this. I've got it all the way back to 11.2.1. I didn't put the other ones in there because starting with 11.2, Apple pulled the update. If you remember, my normal viewers will remember that had a serious problem where it would not calculate that you had enough free space on the device before it started the update. And if that happened, it ran out of space during the update and basically locked you out of your data. So that was a serious issue. So Apple pulled that, and you can't even get to it. But I'm glad that they're keeping the 11.21 all the way to 11.23 available. What's interesting though is that I've also got my site here that gives you all the Mac M1 Apple Silicon IPSW restore files, and they've got them all the way back to 11.01, and those are all still signed. I love this, Apple. Please don't unsign these things like you do with iOS 14 and all the previous iOS updates after they were usually 2 weeks after, and they're unsigned. You can't even install it anymore. So I'm really happy that Apple is still signing all the way back to 11.01. Now, if Apple does decide, there's still a way, which again, I hand it to Apple. Thank you for doing this. Apple did do a reduced security in the security settings on the M1. So if you wanted to install 11.01 after it was unsigned, you still can. You just got to lower the security. And I'll put out a video to show you how to do that once that happens. So that's the full 11.3 IPSW and the full installer. Now, I also note down here, a lot of people say, hey, where is the, let me get to that part here. Where is the package installer? And I mentioned here that, let's see, right here it is. That once Apple redesigned the update system for Big Sur and the full installer, they no longer have downloadable like 11.3 update packages to be able to update to. So you might say, well, wait a minute, I'm having a problem. I go into system preferences, I click on software update, and it says I'm already up to date. And it might say 11.21 or 11.2. And you're thinking, well, what the heck am I going to do? So what I recommend when that happens, close out software update, reboot your system, and try again. That obviously that's a simple thing to do, but you can always open up a terminal window and do software update -L for list, and it'll go out there and check. And sometimes, again, it uses the same binary to do the GUI or the graphical user interface for software update pane and for this, but sometimes maybe you get a different output here. And if that doesn't work, what you can do is actually run the full installer. Now that seems to be a little heavy for that, but you can do it. And that's why I provide this, so you can download this and run the entire 11.3 installer over the top, and that will update you to 11.3 if you're having problems installing the 11.3 update. And look at this, we are done. Let's see where we're at here on the timer here. 15:59 on the T2 2018 Mac Mini. That's pretty interesting that beat out the M1 MacBook Pro and the 2017 T1 system. So that's pretty interesting. So we'll keep that timer going to see how long it takes for the M1 and for the T1. Now, keep in mind, this time around, I had 11.2.3 on these all three devices to make it as even as possible. So that's so I didn't have to have maybe like one on 11.2, and it might take a little bit longer. So you can see this one went off first. I kicked off this one, and then I kicked off this one later. So it's interesting to see that T2 finished. We'll sign in here. And we're back, and look at that, we're on Big Sur 11.3. Great. So back to what I was saying about the update is that if you're having a problem seeing the update, you can always install the full installer. Okay, back to the changes here. Actually, let's see where our Big Sur unpatched. Ooh, it's getting close. So we'll put this here. Oh, look at that, ready to update here. Excellent. Preparing the update. So this is unpacking package. Wow, Ben, you did a great job on this thing. This is really nice. Preparing the update, so this should be going soon here. And let's see where we're at on this okay, great. That one's almost done in that T1 system. And it even gives you the preparing percentage. That's really nice. Okay, so make sure we got this timer going here. So we are still at 17:54 on the M1 and it looks like we got less than a minute remaining here, and the T1's still going here. So we'll let the Patched Sur go, we'll let these two finish, and we'll keep going on the information here. So I talked about the full installer app, and I said that it was 12.43 gigabytes. And I also talk about the new sizes for the M1 and the Intel devices. And what I mean by that is that the update size will say 571 in the software update pane. But when you actually click on the download button or the start now, sometimes it's a little bit different. So I usually document it, and I didn't catch what it was for 11.2.3 yet, and I'll edit this. And looks like we are done on the M1, and it is 1847 on the M1, and looks like we're almost done on the, yep, we're done. So 1855 on the T1, so that's great. Let's hit stop. Okay, and we'll log in here. Great. And no, I do not want to enable Siri. And we'll get to the desktop here. Great, we are back. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a benchmark using GeekBench 5 on all three. And I've got a screenshot of the previous tests that I ran of a single core 1739 and 7666. And let's see if we can get this other T1 system back up here. There we go. Okay, no Siri. And we'll be at the desktop. Anywhere between 15 and 18 minutes for the update to install without the download. So that's actually pretty good. Great, that's done. And we got the GeekBench up here. Actually, let's do that. Let's kick off the GeekBench and we'll see how the benchmarks do. Okay, let's do that. And GeekBench here and GeekBench here. And we'll kick this off. Okay, so let's run the benchmark. Let's run the benchmark and run the benchmark. See if there's any changes from 11.2.3 to 11.3. While that's going, let's get back to the sizes here. And like I said, I'll update the size. And you can see with the 11.2 update to 11.23, there was a difference between 2.44 gigabytes and 3.37 gigabytes. So I talk about the firmware update too. So what's interesting is that Apple, you can see every single firmware update that Apple ever released. I'm keeping track of here, all the way back to 11.0, the original shipping version on the original M1s that first came out. And what you see here is I've got it bolded out, is that Apple usually only updates the firmware on minor. I call 11.23 a point release and 11.3 a minor release, and OS or macOS 11 would be a major and macOS 12 would be a major. So Apple only updates the firmware on a minor release like 11.3, and you can see here they didn't do it on 1, 2, or 3, but again they did on 11.3, and they started changing it on the 11.4 beta 1 was 6723 to 120. So that's going to be the next firmware update when macOS Big Sur 11.4 comes out. And also I talk about, that's why I mentioned the T2 bridge update, because again, that's the operating system that runs all the security chip on the Intel T2 chip, and that runs its own operating system, and that has its own version, 18.16.14.556. And I show the size there, and I show all the previous versions on that too. And I mentioned the IPSW restore file, and Safari has also been updated to 14.1 with that new tracking. So I can show you that option in here. I think we've got it in preferences and I think privacy. Yep. Allow privacy preserving measurements for web advertising. I think that was the setting that was changed, and I talked about that on the my 5-minute video previously. Okay, so I think the T2 finished. Let's look at the different scores here. Well, it was a little bit faster. We've got, and again, sometimes these can be a little bit, there can be a plus or minus here, and it looks like this one just finished here and this one finished here. So let's compare. So a little bit slower on the multi-core and a little bit faster on the single core, and a little bit faster on the single core and a little bit faster on the single core, And let's look at the T1 here and see what we did with this guy. Again, not too much of a difference here, but I like running that just to see if there isn't a large change here. So on the T1, we've got, ooh, look at that. It's a little bit slower. Interesting. Now, keep in mind, I should probably next when 11.4 comes out, I'll give the systems a little bit of time, because sometimes after an update, Spotlight indexing will be running right after to re-index the drive, and certain maintenance actions are happening after an update, and maybe that what could have been happening, but that's definitely a drop in single core and multi-core, and you can see the difference here. I mean, that's a pretty big drop. So maybe I'll run it again in a couple minutes and see if I can get a better score. I'll take a screenshot of this and compare it. Okay, so that's the benchmark on all three devices. So let's talk about what's nice is that Apple really has done a great job on the patch notes on this update. Really good stuff. So they've got two different patch notes. You can see here is the regular patch notes for standard users, and you can see all the changes here, which is really great. And they even cut it out they even separate the Mac computers with an M1 chip, which is really nice too. And when we go here, since I work in a Fortune 500 company, and my job is to support the macOS operating system for the company. So I'm in charge of security, the operating system, all of the controls, and deployment of updates and deployment of major releases. So that's my deal. So all these are very important to me, and a lot of these I've put tickets in to Apple support, their enterprise support team, to get fixed. And it's really great to see that Apple's put all these fixes out here. When I go over some of these things, you might not understand what they are, but they're important to a certain group of people that work with this stuff on a day-by-day basis. So I'll go over these really quickly. So MDM can now defer major and minor software releases separately. And what that is mobile device management. So what that means is, like, a company like Jamf Pro has a software suite that can help enterprise admins control Macs in a corporate environment. And we might need to defer a major or minor software update release due to whatever. It could be a security software suite that is not compatible with the latest update, and we need to defer that until the company comes out with the latest update to fix the problem. So that helps us defer the software update, because remember, I told you previously that the software update binary command used to let us ignore updates. So I could do software update -- ignore space the name of the update, and I won't see that. So I could run that on all my systems, and the update wouldn't be seen on those systems. So that's a really nice feature. But Apple got rid of that and saying, well, now you can only control that from an MDM. SMB Multi-Channel is now supported and enabled by default. When using MDM to restart a macOS device, you can now optionally allow the user interaction before restarting. And we've been asking for this for a long time. What that means is, if we used MDM to send down a software update to a macOS device, we don't want to interrupt them while they're doing their business work. Like if you're in a meeting, you don't want to have your Mac just restart to the OS update right away. So that's a really important thing. Resolves an issue where system extensions are already waiting for user approval and could not be approved by MDM. Let's talk about that real quick. A lot of apps like Symantec or security apps have what's called a kernel extension, and they need it to run their application. But Apple says those are unreliable and can cause problems. So they built a new system called system extensions, and it's a lot more compatible. And they asked all the vendors to move to system extensions for all their software. Now, when they do that, you have to go into system preferences and then go to security and privacy, and you'll see this in general. If you click on General and you install an app and it needs a system extension to be approved, you'll see, and a user would be able to click Allow to install that. But when you're in an enterprise environment, sometimes you have users that are not administrators on their system. So you want to be able to control that. Now, you can with mobile device management, you can say, I want to pre-approve that system extension for the user so they won't have to go in there and approve that. It's really nice to be able to do that. Resolves an issue with content filtering rules when using multiple network extensions simultaneously. And that's another thing too. Content filtering is being used with applications called, like, for example, Microsoft Defender has a content filter, and Cisco AnyConnect VPN client has a content filter. So those are examples of that. Resolves an issue where mobile account creation fails in the first account login. And what that is that if you have Active Directory in your enterprise environment, you can use an account that takes the information and authenticates to your directory server with password and username to be able to log into the system, and it creates the account on there on first login. So Apple is trying to get people to move away from Active Directory, but people still need it because people still have environments where this is used on their Windows side too. So it's great that they were able to get that fixed here. Updating Wi-Fi payload includes a certificate identity no longer creates a duplicate identity. Safari now respects a user-defined always allow settings for SSO certificates. Resolves an issue with browsing network file servers hosting a large number of SMB shares. Now, this is important for the enterprise too, because we have large file servers for different creative groups that store all their files. So if you're connecting to an SMB file share on a server somewhere on the company network, and they have a ton of files and shares, that was a problem trying to navigate through those. Resolves an issue that prevents software updates from initiating at the login window or starting at the login window. Now, that was a big deal because when we push software updates in the corporate environment, sometimes we'll have like kiosk machines in there at nighttime. They're locked and they're at the login window. So we still want to be able to push a software update to that system and have a reboot. If we push previously in 11.2.3 and lower, if we push that update to that system, it would actually not install and it would fail out. So it's really nice that they've got that fix in there. Also resolves an issue where an app installation may fail if an MDM reissues the install command. So that's fixed too. So the security content of macOS Big Sur, there is a ton of security fixes in here. And some of them, most of them, were backported back to Catalina and Mojave. But keep in mind, Apple keeps the latest and greatest operating system as its most current release. And they will fix almost all of the security fixes that are available in the latest release. Some don't get fixed in Catalina and Mojave that do get fixed in Big Sur. So if you want the latest secure device, make sure that you're on the latest release. And I recommend upgrading now to 11.3. I've updated multiple machines to 11.3 and I have not seen any issues so far, other than a couple that we'll get to in a minute here. And these are undocumented changes and fixes that I wanted to go over, and we'll get to that in just a little bit here. So I already went over most of the 11.3 release notes in the previous video, and I'll link to that above here. And let's get our Patched Sur system and see how it's doing here. All right, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? 19 minutes remaining on our 11.3 update on our unpatched Mac. Again, I can't tell you how great it is to be able to install Big Sur on this unsupported Mac. This machine here is an early 2013 MacBook Pro with an SSD, 16 gigs of RAM. There's no reason why this machine should not be able to run the latest and greatest operating system. And this proves it here. The work that they're straight up full-fledged developers, basically taking the installer, modifying it and the system to be able to run the latest and greatest operating system. Again, hats off to you guys. You guys have done a fantastic job, and it's wonderful that we can take these devices here, and instead of them just being, well, you can't install the latest and greatest operating systems, so they're just trash. We're keeping computers and systems usable well into the future. And I think that's a very important thing. When we purchase these devices, we spend thousands of dollars on these devices, and we want to see them used well into the future. Sure, if you want to buy a brand new latest and greatest M1 Mac, that's fine. But for a lot of families, if they can't afford the latest and greatest machines, they want to be able to use these well into the future. And these bring new security fixes and improvements to these systems, and they can be run well into the future. So again, this is great. We'll keep an eye on this bad boy here. Okay, let's go to those undocumented changes that I talk about. And these are another thing that I wanted to mention, that is this article is a living, breathing document. I don't just post one change and then never touch this article again. When I find something new and I think you guys might want to know about it, I put it in here. So even after this video is done, I'll probably find more changes, and I'll make sure that they're in there. So if you want to get the latest and greatest changes, here's where you go. So let's talk about the undocumented changes and fixes. And the first one is a new Setup Assistant language screen with a voiceover. So let me get that out so I can show you that live here. And I'm going to fire this up. I just rebuilt this M1 here, and I use the 11.3 IPSW file to reinstall it. So this is a first time boot, and it should boot to that new language screen and have the new voiceover. We'll be able to see that live here. The next one is the username and password login window option is now respected. And here's that language screen I was talking about. We'll give it a second for that voiceover to come. The username and password login window is important.
English is the main language.
There you go.
Press the return key.
And that's great. And if you're blind, the voiceover is very important to users, and that's why Apple's really passionate about accessibility on macOS, and I think that's great. So we'll put that off to the side here. So the next thing here is, again, I mentioned that the username and password at the login window. We've seen this before. And what that means is that when you go into users and groups here, and you go into login options, this is the option that I'm talking about, list of users. So when you get to the login window, you'll see the circle with your picture, and you'll see a password window. So you can see all the users in the system. In enterprise environments, sometimes you don't want to see all the users in the system. And with M1 devices, that wasn't working properly. So you would set it as a name and password. And so you would see two different lines, one to type in your username and one to type in your password, but that wasn't being respected on the new unified login window for the M1 devices. So that's fixed, which is great. Number 3, M1 Apple Silicon M1 Restore now properly erases all settings during a DFU Apple configurator to restore. This includes saved Wi-Fi endpoint and password settings. What does that mean? Now, I created a video that I was going to put out, and now it's outdated, and I didn't get to finish it on time. And what I'm talking about here is that all Intel Macs have what's called NVRAM settings, or PRAM, perimeter RAM or non-volatile RAM. And there's settings on there that Apple stores in there, like maybe the volume, whether you want to play the startup chime. There's kernel panic information in there and stuff like that. But also, your saved Wi-Fi information is stored there on M1 devices to be able to be used in macOS recovery. Now, keep in mind, this is a nice feature. So you don't have to connect to Wi-Fi every time you want to maybe reinstall Big Sur, or you have to do something in recovery. So that's a feature. But the problem is that when you connect to Wi-Fi in recovery or in macOS on an M1 device, it sets it in the system keychain in macOS, and also sets it in non-volatile RAM for use in recovery. Now, why is that important? Well, if you go to sell your Mac in the future and you want to sell it to maybe your neighbor, if you reinstall and erase your M1 Mac, you're immediately brought to a screen that says activate this Mac. Well, how are you going to activate it without connecting to the internet? Once you activate the Mac with your Wi-Fi and you connect to your Wi-Fi, it saves those Wi-Fi credentials again to your non-volatile RAM. Now, keep in mind that you can't get to those credentials you can't go in to look at the Nvram settings and see the information. It's all coded and encrypted. But the problem is that it also sets it into the system keychain. So when they get into the operating system, they are now connected to your Wi-Fi endpoint because it has the SSID name and it has the password saved to the system keychain. So that's really important to do. So what I recommend with this, and again, the DFU now clears that data out. So when you do a DFU restore on your M1 Mac, it clears that information out. But when you come back up, it's not like Erase Mac where you have to activate the Mac. The good thing is a DFU mode erase and restore sets all that information like a new volume owner set to the next user that creates the account and setup assistant. So when you restart that Mac after DFU, it brings you right to the setup assistant. When you do Erase Mac from the disk utility in macOS Recovery, as soon as you click Erase Mac, it restarts the Mac, comes up with a screen and says activate Mac, but then you got to connect to a network. So you're kind of back all over again. So what I recommend is if you have a second Mac and you need to sell it, do a DFU restore. You'll have to reset up the Wi-Fi, or the new user will have to set up their Wi-Fi. If you don't have a second Mac, then what I'm recommending you do, and you want to sell it to someone in your neighborhood or in your same town, if you're sending it across the country, who cares, right? Unless you use the same password for your bank account or something like that. But what I recommend is going to recovery, doing Erase Mac, and then it'll reboot to activate Mac. Leave it there. Hand it to the next user at activate Mac, and they'll have to. It's not going to be that big of a deal for them to reinstall macOS Big Sur, but your saved Wi-Fi information will not be on that system when you hand it to them. So that's that. It was a long and drawn out thing, but I think it's important for your privacy to be able to not have that information on the system when you give it to a new user. And Apple really doesn't give us a way. If you go to the site that says what to do before you sell your Mac to a new person, there's nothing in there that tells you anything to do with an M1 on Nvram. You have to use Nvram-C binary command to clear that out. So that's that. The next thing, you guys are asking me about Rosetta. Are the rumors true? Is Rosetta being uninstalled when the 11.3 update is performed? The answer is no, but with a caveat. There's been new reports that, and I personally test this, and this happened on some of the machines that I use at work, is that when you update to the latest version 11.3 on an M1 device, Rosetta is actually updated in the 11.3 installer. And when you get up to the operating system, for some reason, it's not running properly. So anything that required Rosetta, like Microsoft Defender or Cisco AnyConnect, that's still an Intel binary that requires Rosetta to run, those systems aren't running. And you're thinking, what the heck's going on? So Defender's warning you that it's not running. Cisco AnyConnect saying that the VPN agent won't start. And if that happens to you, all you need to do is restart. Now think about that for a second. That seems like, okay, a simple thing, right? But a lot of Mac admins had to do a lot of research to find out what to do in this situation. So luckily, a restart fixes it. But again, the last thing you want to do is have users reboot again after they installed the 11.3 update. So that's kind of a pain, but at least we got a decent fix for that. And the final one, the undocumented change, is that the macOS Big Sur 11.3 IPSW file will no longer restore on the Mac Mini DTK. Now, almost everybody's turned those back in by now, but I needed to see if this works. So how do I do that, right? And I'll show you what I did. And all you need to do is look at the build manifest of the full installer. And I've got that up here so we can take a quick peek at that here. This is the 11.2.3 plist of the IPSW full installer. And you can see the actual name of the DTK is ADP3,2. So that's fine. That's in the supported list to be able to use 11.23 to reinstall. Now this is the 11.3 file. It is gone. So it's no longer support. But look at that. That's where I was able to confirm that the brand new 21,1 and 2 24-inch iMac has built-in support for 11.3. That was a really big find, and I put that in the, I'll show you where I put that here, device ID page here, or the board ID and device ID. And you can see that here, that I document all of the device IDs and the product ID of all the hardware here. And you can see here is the new iMac here and the device ID right here. So that's how you can tell that. So I think we're coming up on the end here. Let's check on our Patched Sur system here. Oh boy, our Patched Sur system is done. So let's log in, and we will most likely have to patch our Wi-Fi kex, but Ben gives us a real easy way to do that. And you can see how it's not, this is what I was talking about, how it says optimizing your Mac. We didn't see that on these, but we did on this one. And again, there's some things that are running in the background right after the update. So that's why I don't think that in the next video, I'll make sure that I give the systems a little bit of time to finish those tasks, and then I'll run the GeekBench score after that. So now, as you can see, that the Wi-Fi is not connecting. So we've got to run our patch kex after this. Put this down here, and we should be able to fix that. And we'll type in our admin password. Get that done. Great. This is a long video, and if you've made it to the end, you are a true hero. But you want to know what? There's a lot of people that like to talk about all these details, some nerdy details of the update, and maybe you learn something along the way. I almost think of these videos as more of a discussion, right? We're having a discussion on all the changes in the update, and I know it's hard to have a long attention span. Don't worry about it. If you didn't stay the whole video, no big deal. If you watched a couple parts here and there and got a little bit of information that you enjoyed, that's why I'm here. And I hope that you did get something that you enjoyed. I forgot about this. I'm glad that I remembered this. How do I tell if a IPSW file is still signed by Apple? And I use an application called TSS Checker. And you can use this too, and maybe I can show you how to do that later if you're interested. Oh, here we go. Restart to finish, and we'll have Wi-Fi after the reboot here. You can see right here that it's not connected, but after we come back up from the restart, we'll have our Wi-Fi. And beautiful. Really nice update there. So back to the signing real quick here. Users, I put the binary in my downloads folder. You can tell the device. I've got the Mac Mini 9,1. I've got the version of macOS 11.2.3, and the board config is J313AP, and I can just run that check, and it can check and it says, hey, this version of macOS is signed for this device. And that's how I can check those things, and actually checks Apple servers, and you can see all the options or all the checks that it's doing in here. So let's see if we can restart this manually here. Great. So again, in closing here, I appreciate you guys watching these videos. And if you see something in here, or you would like to see something that I didn't cover, feel free to let me know in the comments. I like having a discussion with you guys in the comments to talk about different things. If you guys have any questions in the comments, I try to get to as many comments as possible on each video that comes out. Again, I really appreciate you guys watching, and if you could and you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click on that subscribe button for more videos like this in the future. And if you're a current subscriber, I really truly do appreciate it. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.